You know, when I look around and I travel across our country, I meet these families without health care. I help them as a senator. You know, when the man from northern New York calls me and says, Senator, I have worked for the same company for 20 years. I've always had good insurance. I've always paid my part. We've never really needed it. And now my son has been diagnosed with a rare disease, and the doctors say there's only one place he can be treated in the country, and the insurance company says they're not going to send him there. What am I supposed to do? Why have I worked all these years? Why have I paid for this insurance all these years? So, you know, I go to work, my staff goes to work, the insurance company gets nervous, they might get some bad publicity. So they say, okay, fine, we'll send the boy there. But I don't think it should take a United States Senator to get a man the health care that his sick son needs after he's paid for it all those years. But, you know, this man's been invisible to this administration. If you're more than one of the 75,000 households still living in trailers after Katrina nearly 2 years ago, you're invisible. If you're a hard-working mom that is trying to balance family and work, and you need child care, and you can't find affordable child care, you're invisible too. If you're somebody who believes you have a right to organize, and the National Labor Relations Board is against you, and the Department of Labor should not even have the name labor in it because there's not anybody in there who cares about labor, well, you're invisible too. And I got to tell you, I never thought that we would see what we have seen in the last months. And that's our young men and women coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. They've been injured. A lot of them have the physical injuries that you can see with your eyes. They've lost arms and legs. And then there are those who have the injuries you can't see. The post-traumatic stress disorder, the traumatic brain injury, which is the signature wound of this war. I was at Walter Reed a few months ago, and I was visiting with some of the soldiers there, and I met this young captain who'd been in an IED attack on his convoy in Baghdad. And he'd lost his right arm, and he lost his ring finger on his left hand because he had his wedding band on. And when the explosion occurred, the wedding band melted into his finger. And I met him as he was on his way to go to be fitted for his prosthetics. I said, well, how are you doing? He said, you know, I'm getting along. He said, you know, the prosthetic is working. I'm figuring out how to use it. He said, but where do I go to get my brain back? He said, every morning my wife gives me a list of where I'm supposed to go. He said, you know, I took care of myself. I took care of the men under my command. Now my wife has to give me a list about where I go? To these people, we owe everything. We owe them health care for life. We owe them our respect. We owe them and their families not only the support they need immediately upon returning, but for as long as it takes to help them. And they've been invisible to the president who sent them to war. He's been more than happy to send them time and time again. But he has fought us on funding the VA. He has slow-walked us on trying to get the health care that they need. And I think it's been a breach of his duty as Commander-in-Chief to take care of the people who have taken care of us. Well, one thing I know, all of these people are not invisible to the steelworkers, and they're not invisible to me, and they won't be invisible to the next president of the United States, because when we take back the White House, we're going to make it clear that every single American is part of our America. And we're going to work to restore the economy and the opportunity that goes with it. We're going to work to make sure that we have health care for everyone. We're going to work to create new, good-paying jobs by dealing with energy and global warming. And we are going to bring our troops home. If George Bush doesn't end this war in Iraq when I'm president, I will. You know, I think we're at a critical moment in our history. And I think we've got to do two things simultaneously. We do have to look to the past to figure out what made America great and how we work together and get inspiration from our leaders. And you know, back in those days, going all the way back to the progressive era, there were actually Republicans who believed we were all in this together. You know, one of my favorite Republicans, and I don't have a long list, but you know, is Teddy Roosevelt. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt said that the welfare of each of us is dependent fundamentally upon the welfare of all of us. When is the last time you've heard a modern Republican say anything like that? So we need to be looking to the past to pull forward our values, our ideals, and the progressive impulse that we've always needed in America. We go through periods where we've got to kind of pull together and change the direction. You know, back at the end of the 19th century, for heaven's sakes, it was the robber baron age. It was child labor. It was the abuse of working people. And through a combination of political leadership and the growth and strength of the American trade movement, we were able to give Americans a life that was worthy of our ideals. And now we've got to do the same thing. I consider myself a modern progressive, someone who is rooted in what worked in the past, but with my eyes firmly fixed on the future. You know, we can't live the same way we lived in the past. The world is different. America is different. You know, think of everything we have today we didn't even have 10 or 15 years ago. You know, people weren't on the internet. We didn't have cell phones that could give you pictures from all over the world and take, you know, videos of people as you walk down the street. That's a new hazard for somebody in my business. I mean, you know, I love the way the press is always saying, we just want our people in public life to act naturally and to be themselves. Say, fine, well, you walk around with 9 million cameras on you someday and tell me how it feels. You know, you just got to get used to it and sort of blow it off. It just kind of comes with the territory. So we've got to have this tension, which I think is a healthy tension, about how we stay true to our values, but lead America with confidence and optimism into the future. I believe the foundation of a strong economy is not wealth at the very top, but the investments we make in each other. You know, I want an America again where we're proud to hold out a helping hand to those who are trying to help themselves. I believe we are doing better when we have shared prosperity. You know, the other day, Warren Buffett, who's, you know, the second or third wealthiest person in the world, you know, told a group that I was with, he said, look, if this is class warfare, my class is winning. And that's not good for America. He said, I pay less as a percentage of my income in taxes than the woman who's my receptionist. If you take her income tax and her payroll tax, she pays more than I do. And I don't think that's fair. And we need more people who are willing to stand up and say that and help us change the way we're doing our politics, our tax policy, and our economic policy. So let's replace this ownership society idea of the Bush administration, which is an un-American idea, because it basically says those who have get more and everybody else are left out. Let's go back to the we're all in it together. And this starts with standing up for unions and ending the administration's practice of harassing and bureaucratizing labor organizations.